Well, joining us now is editor of the Jewish Telegraph, Paul Harris. Well, I don't know whether I said the name of that party right. It's Likud. Correct me if I got that horribly wrong. But, you know, does he have a point here? Because I think previously London, once upon a time, would have been held up as a bastion for when it comes to the safety and security for Jews in the West. And this is pretty shameful if we're now bottom of the league table, according to this minister.
Well, this minister is something of a firebrand. He does court headlines, and this is based on no specific data whatsoever. This seems to me just to be pure rhetoric. We know that London has been branded in parts as a no-go area for Jews. But again, you know, we have to be very careful because when we describe as a no-go area for Jews, we're talking about those who look outwardly Jewish or display Stars of David, etc. It is those people who do feel threatened. But anybody perhaps looking like myself walking through the streets of London might feel some intimidation if we see some of the images like you're showing on screen at the moment. But again, this minister has based this on no specific data whatsoever.
Nevertheless, Paul, you're in Manchester, aren't you? So you're okay.
Well, I'm actually in London at this moment.
Oh, okay, okay. I mean, I think he's using London as a sort of overall term, probably for every city here, because we all have these Palestinian marches. So I think you in Manchester will know as much about it as we do in London. But is it your impression that Britain, the cities of Britain, I mean, and I do think there's a lot of anti-Semitism going on at the moment, and I'm appalled by it. But is it your impression that anti-Semitism in Britain is worse than, say, on the continent?
It's really impossible for me to be specific about that. We've seen similar marches, similar attacks in other parts of Europe and other parts of the world. It's certainly pretty bad in this country, and it's certainly worse than I've ever known it, and most of my contemporaries ever have. And younger people are certainly feeling very threatened. But I've got no real yardstick to suggest that it's any worse here than anywhere else. It's pretty bad, but we're seeing it all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, is it fair to say, actually, I was just looking online there at which countries in Europe have actually intervened to ban some of these pro-Palestine marches. And there's quite a significant roll call here. It starts with Serbia, France, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, Bulgaria. I mean, it seems to me on the continent, a lot of our European neighbours have said enough is enough. These marches end. This is a big geopolitical issue. Fine, but actually demonstrating it and playing it out on our streets is not appropriate. Do you think we should be following in their footsteps?
I think we should certainly be curbing them. There was a pretty unpleasant rally in Glasgow over the weekend, which people found very, very intimidating. But even as we see countries attempting to ban these marches, I think a lot of the protests are still taking place. I think we certainly need to curb the marches here, and the police need more powers to act where there is incitement to hatred or specific anti-Semitism.
The issue on the table here, partly, Paul, is there is this perception that the police, the authorities, show a favouritism towards Islam and are actually fairly anti-Israel and therefore fairly anti-Jewish. What did you make of this story that our jaws dropped about it, really? At London's King's Cross station a couple of days ago, they suddenly, on the big notice board with all the train times, they suddenly beam up this massive, great message about Ramadan. You know, there it is. Here's to you at Ramadan and all that. No one can ever remember them putting a message on about Christianity, about the Jewish faith, about Buddhism, Hinduism, etc., etc. The Network Rail said, we don't know how this message got up. We'll take it down. Some kind of mistake is being made. But it is kind of strange, isn't it? What did you make of it?
Well, I'm presuming that there are quite a number of Muslim employees, and possibly they felt this was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. At this time, it certainly might be seen as antagonistic, but perhaps, you know, with Jewish New Year coming up, Passover coming up actually in a few weeks' time, and Jewish New Year in September, October, maybe we'll see similar messages beamed by Network Rail. But I can only suspect that this has probably been put up by a Muslim employee without any real authority to do so.
Yeah, I suspect you're right.
I'll be waiting for seeing. He has risen indeed next week or so.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you ever so much.
Good to
Great
talk to you,
have
Paul, as
back
always.
on
Thank
the
you.
programme.